One.
Ain't nobody following your.
I know, I'm like getting offended here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. I do recognize that I have 6 bills that I can file. And generally I file those that didn't pass the year before because I know they're great bills. But the number one that I'm going to be pushing for first has to do with the nursing homes. This was a bill that had to have a committee that comes together and look at the best practices for nursing homes. We need to look at cases where there have been homicides or either there is, not really homicides, but a suspicious death. And to make sure that we understand what is happening in those challenges for nursing homes and why people are expiring while they're in the nursing home with reasonably good health in the next morning they're deceased. A neighbor of mine was experienced something very difficult in her family. Her father was in a nursing home and was probably the most active person in the home. And all of a sudden he stopped talking to everybody, stopped eating, and just kind of mellowed out. Well, that led to his death. On his autopsy, they determined that he had swallowed his dentures. We need to have someone looking and overlooking these nursing homes, finding out what's going on, making sure that we don't see what we saw in Broward County. People are dying who can be nursed and looked at better, and we need to create best practices. We have it when we come to Children and Family Services, and they review cases of death, and we can do the very same thing here and implement the best practices from those.
Last one, because I really want to get to
I'm
these
gonna be
questions.
very fast because I have all the stuff I want to do and I can touch stand your ground and immigration and nursing home, but I want to talk about the Affordable Care Act. First thing I will do, the current Attorney General has joined a lawsuit to declare the Affordable Care Act unconstitutional. First thing I will do is remove Florida from that lawsuit and protect everybody's access to health care that allows you to not be kicked off for pre-existing conditions.
Okay, great. So now we have some really good questions here. And what I'm going to do is read the question and then you can chime in if you want to answer it. How can we stop women who are victims of abuse from being jailed for defending themselves or fighting back? Mainly women of color are disproportionately in prison. Anybody want to take that one? Sir?
We have a very antiquated, nonsensical statute on the book, Florida Statute 934, which has to do with the dissemination of information that's captured by electronic, audio, video, what have you. Because Florida is a 2-person consent state, I need your consent to record what I'm saying. I think we should absolutely have an exception. This is pattern behavior. Your husband, your partner, your whatever doesn't go from like wonderful to snapping off. There's a pattern, and I think that stuff like that should be admissible. And therefore, I think that we should be able to have an exception to be able to include that kind of information to just show a pattern. So it's not a he said, she said. We have too many cases that are he said, she said, and domestic violence usually occurs typically in privacy, in a home. So fingerprints don't help. There's no cameras. There's no other evidence to corroborate. So that's one thing.
Sounds like a bill.
So I want to chime in on that. There are things that we can do on the front end. There are things that can happen on the back end. On the back end, lots of states have passed measures that protect women in terms of self-defense in a way that our current system does not, from the disproportionate sentencing that happens. And if you're looking at how the sentencing happens when it comes to women versus men for the exact same crime, it's absurd. Like a guy will get 6 months and a woman will get 16 years. Part of that has to do with sexual, well, I want to say structural sexism that's built into the system. That's a whole deeper discussion, but there are some laws that we can just take from other states that would alleviate that problem on the back end. On the front end, my mom is real big on prevention is better than cure. Prevenir, c'est mieux que guérir. That's what it translates to. And a lot of times what happens in these situations is these women end up in a situation where it's either kill or be killed. But if we intervene before that by providing services where these people can find a place to stay, and they don't have, a lot of these women stay in these situations because they don't know what else to do. They don't have any other income coming in, they don't have any homes that they can, like, so they just stick it out. And they don't, not that sure what to do with the kids. So, and a lot of times, we've worked with a couple of different women in different contexts, trying to get them into shelters or other places where they can just have some safety while they're dealing with this domestic violence situation. And a lot of times they're just full to capacity and there's nowhere to send them. So if we take some time and invest some resources in that in the front end, that will alleviate a lot of the situation before it escalates on that other end. We need stronger laws as it pertains to domestic violence protective orders and what that entails, and at what point you start to get the police involved, and at what point they stay involved, and what kind of protection you get throughout that process. Those are some things that can happen on the front end that would help alleviate the problem later on.
Great. So, one of the things that you alluded to, Commissioner, was transportation. How do we deal with the county's massive transit money being allocated to transit right-of-ways? And then for the state people, this may come up in Tallahassee as well.
I haven't gone into detail about that particular form of legislation. I know what we have coming up next week is a rapid transit town hall meeting between Florida Department of Transportation and the City of Opa-locka, where we are advocating for the heavy rail to come and extend from Miami-Dade, from 62nd all the way up to the county line. And that is something that is in desperate need. It has been for decades. That was one of the original reasons why the people transportation tax was put in place. And it just needs to get done. Simple as that. We've been to too many areas. We've been misallocating funds, and that just needs to stop. Period.
In every major city in the United States, half of this room would have gotten here by public transportation. How many of you got here tonight by public transportation? We have 410,000 uninsured motorists on the roadway. The other day in Little Haiti, a guy with no insurance cut a bus off that knocked into a building, and now that guy's building in 28 years has to be demolished. Got a notice from the city, he's got to move out. So it's a tough love measure, but we need to get the uninsured motorists and cars that should not be on the roadway because it's too easy to get to a car off the roadway, create the critical mass that will then generate the necessity for those people to get to work and to commute into public transportation using best practices. It's a tough love measure, but there are too many people on the roadway that should not be on the roadway.
Right. Okay. Yes.
So on the half penny tax, part of the issue is holding your elected officials accountable. If you aren't happy with the decisions your elected officials at the county are making, don't re-elect them the next time they're on the ballot. Because at the end of the day, the county commission is the one year after year that has been allocating those dollars in a way that the voters do not agree with. The second problem is the county doesn't have enough money to build heavy rail. They just don't. Because the county, Miami-Dade County is $15 billion in debt. To put that in perspective, the amount of debt, that bondable debt that the county carries is $15 billion. The amount of bondable debt that the state of Florida carries is 21. The county's budget is $7.5 billion. Florida's budget is $89 billion. They just don't have the money. And frankly, I think that the leaders locally should be more open and interactive as far as the facts of transportation. There are state roads, there are county roads, there are city roads. There's a process in the legislature. I did it. I'm sure Sean did it. Yolanda's familiar with it. Dottie will become familiar with it. And Barbara, I'm sure, has done it more because she's the most senior member of the House on this panel. And legislators can file individual appropriation requests for their community. There are road requests, there are water and sewer requests. They come through the cities. They are sponsored by their members. Under the governor and my administration, the requests of those when those would come, is that there had to be local skin in the game. Couldn't just come to the state and ask the state to pay for 100% of the project. There had to be local skin in the game. And Yolanda can attest to this, many, if not all the cities and counties have agreed and followed suit for the state to invest in county right-of-ways or city right-of-ways. But at the end of the day, holding the local elected officials accountable is a big part of the equation. If they think they can get away with telling you one thing and doing another, they'll continue to do it. And to an extent, that's what's been happening here locally. Promises remain, and promises were broken, year after year after year, and hundreds of millions of dollars were spent on things that have no legacy. Spent on overhead costs and not on capital projects, bricks and mortar projects. And that, at the end of the day, I mean, I'm not a candidate for office, I'm just telling you, based on the experience that I've seen, it's easy to say one thing, but until you hold people accountable for the things they say and the things they do at an elected level, you won't see a lot of change, because they'll think they can continue to get away with it.
So we're bringing this to a close, so I do want to take a point of personal privilege before we get to the complete end. We have our president in the back. Ruben, would you come up, please? You gotta know I'm doing this. And I'm going somewhere with this. So Ruben and I have known each other at least 20 some odd years.
Since Jesus was a little boy.
Oh, yeah, not between. But, I think I alluded to the fact that one of the first things that I got involved in was the NAACP. One of the things, first things that Ruben and I got involved in was registering people to vote. And that year, we registered 30,000 people to vote. And we were both, I'm never having gray hair, but anyway. But I just want to tell him that it took a lot. He called me, I was like, I'm not doing that, I'm not going back. But I just tell you how great this is and how great this panel is. And we really are looking forward to working with you and your vision. And so I just want to come up and have you embarrassed for a minute so you can go back and sit down.
Thank you very much.
And seriously, this panel is outstanding.
It is.
And we just don't get to do this enough. So we thank you for your time on a Friday night. I don't have a life. I'm sure you have a life. Something else you could be doing. So I thought it would be fun that we would, since it's Friday night, and you've taken this time away from your schedule, to do some predictions. So I want you to predict, let's pretend it's November 7th. And I'm not going to ask you to predict the winner or the loser, but I want you to predict what will be the issue that is most important to this community. And when you finish with that, then we'll close. You can go first, Commissioner. You can look at me. That's a Sunday school move. Pay attention. Pay attention.
That's a hard question.
I went to University of Florida.
The challenges we're facing, I do predict that change will come to Opa-locka and the state of Florida. And with that change, we'll be in a better position to identify the problems that are most pressing and what exactly we can do about them. I don't come into this office with any rose-colored vision. Like, I want to see what we can actually get done during the time that we have with the resources we have on the table. So while change will be here, we have to figure out what we're going to do with that change. I think that is the most important question that us as elected officials have to look at, because the people, they did their job, they voted, now it's our job to actually take action.
Okay. November 7th, what's the issue?
I believe the greatest issue for the cities that I represent is going to be redistricting. And that's gonna be very important to how it plays out. Who sits in that governor's mansion is gonna have a great deal of effect on how these districts are chosen.
November 7th, what's the important issue?
Well, I'll pick some winners and losers. I'm gonna win and Andrew's gonna win. And so I will tell you that. And that is gonna be changing. And quite frankly, I think the issue is going to be what that change looks like. When you elect a governor and an attorney general that are of a different party that have been there in a long time, and you elect people that look like Andrew and I look, that's change. And how does that look? How does the future of Florida, what do we do with that? And where do we go with that? How do we change government? And obviously, we don't win unless people want change. I mean, because if we lose, that means people are happy with what they've got over the last 20 years. So this is going to be a historic election one way or the other. I am going to predict we're going to win those 2 seats at least. And man, it's going to be, it is going to be really just amazing to start tackling some of these public education issues and healthcare issues, and use the Attorney General's office to investigate nursing home deaths that should be investigated. And when a bridge collapses in FIU and people die, and there's no investigation about it from the Attorney General's office, these things are just, you know, and gun violence, as Senator Tavi Pizzo, you know, these things are all important. Immigration is something that we didn't talk about some, but it's important. I don't believe kids ought to be locked in cages and wrapped in a foil blanket in a detention center. And as the next Attorney General, I will join the lawsuit to claim that to be unconstitutional. So these are all things that are possible and on the table that November 7th we'll get down to business and get to doing.
November 7th, what's the issue?
On November 7th, politically, the state of Florida government, nothing is going to change. Because at the cabinet level, those officers don't get sworn until January. Transitions begin. The legislature gets sworn in 2 weeks after. I believe the issues on November 7th, 8th are going to be the same issues they are today. People worrying about whether or not their kids are safe, getting a good education, whether or not they got a job, and whether or not they can provide for their family. That's the same issue today as it's going to be on November 8th. That is the issue of the people, what they're cared about, not talking points. So one of the things, the refreshing part of not being a candidate is you don't have to stick to the script of the talking points. And parroting and repeating what you hear on cable news. People care about their homes, they care about their neighborhoods, they care about their family, they care about their friends. And frankly, what I've been seeing in politics, I think they care less and less about what they're seeing in politics because they've lost more faith in politics than they ever have before. And I blame both parties. Both are guilty. Both are to blame. They just keep ratcheting it up, one side to the other side to the other, and it has got to stop. We have to remember that we are all citizens of the same country. We all breathe the same air. We all want the same thing for our children's future. And until we start recognizing that we are all on the same team at the end of the day, as God's children, we're not going to really see change, because then it's less about change, less about the outcomes, and more about how do I get the power. And I'm ashamed of some of the things that I've seen over the last 12 months in politics. And call me cynical, but I'm on a different side of the equation than many of us at this table. I've seen too many things. And I've been witness to too many tragedies. Everybody comes out, does their show in front of the camera, says their talking points, and then moves on. And it upsets me many times. So come January, I'll just be a regular private citizen, spending time with my kids, traveling less, and I look forward to seeing leadership from those of you in this panel who are elected to office. And if you're not, don't give up. I lost my first race, and actually, I think everybody here except Sean is guaranteed to be in office. It's a commissioner. Okay, well, don't give up. If you believe in it and you're passionate, I mean,